which are part of that.
Is there anything else we need to do in the short term?
I have no idea. But when I read the usual stuff around it, that was kind of one of the things which seemed that we are missing. The stats around the contributors and project velocity and so on. Is that something what we should get from the dev stats? So that should be easy to get from there. So I think the adopters is the main thing which we are missing.
Do we have a deadline when we have to either produce it or present it to the, is it still to the TOC or to a SIG, or I've kind of lost track of the status of the sandbox?
I have no idea, but I think we had 2 months since the first email came, and that was around 1 month ago.
Okay.
Actually, that was, yeah, July 23rd. So, yeah, a little bit less than a month.
Jakub, this is so you should be able to share the screen now. Sorry, I managed to join as the host.
Yeah, no problem with that. Anyone has anything else for the open forum? Or Simon, do you have something more to that, to the annual review?
No.
So in that case, I think the next point on the agenda is Ulf, who created this nice Strimzy sandbox, which he wanted to show to everyone. So I guess over to Ulf, and Tom, can you allow Ulf to share the screen as well, as I guess, or will you need it, Ulf?
Yeah, I'd like to have a quick demo.
Yeah, you should be able to share the screen off. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so hello, this is my first, how would you call it, Strimzy community meeting, and the first time I use Zoom, so I hope my screen sharing is working.
We can see some slides.
Some slides, yes, slides. Yeah, so hello, for those who don't know me, I work at Red Hat, close to the Strimzy team, and some while ago I wrote what I call a sandbox, like a playground for another project I've been working on, and as a way to learn more about Strimzy on my part, I stood up a similar service for Strimzy in order to, mostly for my own indication, but it's an interesting exercise in order to see, see what's in a product or not. So basically, there's I'll quickly go through the service itself. It's basically also intended as a like a public service for anyone who wanted to try out Strimzy or Kafka. More, I guess, more accurate is to say try out Kafka and the topics without having to set up Kubernetes or manage the cluster itself. And the idea is that just for evaluation purposes or just testing something, you can register to get a free environment for a limited time period. And once your let's call it account registration has expired, then all the data is deleted and so on. So there's a couple of notes here, like you should do this to do legal stuff, but since it's free, maybe that's hard to prevent. But as it stands now, the service is a single shared Kafka cluster that's deployed using Strimzy, and it allows up to 2 topics per tenant, and there's like TLS required for the clients in order to go to my cluster. So I have an instance of this service running on DigitalOcean, where I've installed StreamC and so on. So I'll quickly do a demo of this, and then I'll show you a bit how it works in some diagrams I've made. So I'll just log in. To do this, I have to. Maybe I'll use a different browser. Sorry, so I don't have to get the one-time password. There. So sorry. So I'll register, and the sandbox will automatically provision sort of my slice of the cluster. It will give me some information about when I got registered, when my environment was provisioned, when it expires. So right now it's like 48 hours. And then the host names of the Bootstrap service and the brokers. And in this case, I think I have deployed 3 zookeepers and just 1 Kafka broker. And the user is given a unique namespace on the cluster. You can download the config to create the resources. So the only thing you really need here is kubectl to manage your topics, and then the Kafka tools, for instance, if you want to just play around with that. So I'll just try to go through this. So I downloaded these files, create a topic. So you'll notice the topic name is, as all of you know, you can't have multiple topics the same name. So there are some tricks done here by the service to prefix all the topic resources that gets created. And I'll explain a bit more how that actually works, but just complete this for demo's sake. Just send a message, and then you can also retrieve them. So it's a bit slow from time to time, so it's not a super awesome latency in the service. But yeah, the idea is you sort of get everything you need to basically try things out in this single page, which I think is really nice. I'll just go to the source code, or like a diagram, trying to explain a bit how it works. So it's basically 3 kinds of flows here. So you have one is the sandbox application itself, which is just a web application that a tenant uses to register login. There's a REST API that it can use, and it authenticates the user against a Keycloak instance that runs on the cluster. When the tenant manages the topics, the same Keycloak cluster is used to authenticate using a component called OIDC proxy, which is the same company making the cert manager, that basically allows you to proxy the Kubernetes API through an OpenID Connect provider. So it's using the Keycloak as that provider. So when the tenant registers login, then this Keycloak will use GitHub to authenticate the user, and then store the identity in its database. And when you're using this OIDC proxy, then you use the same token basically to authenticate the API requests. So when you register, this sandbox operator creates a unique namespace for this tenant. and applies the RBAC rules for this tenant to create topics, and that's the only thing it's allowed to create. And you can also it also applies a quota using resource quota object in Kubernetes to restrict how many topics, but it doesn't do any admission control beyond that, like preventing to use the number of partitions or replicas, for instance. And basically, when it comes to connecting the Kafka clients, as I mentioned, right now, the sandbox operator is actually the one that watches for the Kafka topic resources, and it copies them to a namespace where the Streamzy operator is installed, and where the topic operator is able to see that resource. And when it copies it, it actually replaces the name with this prefix. So you get the namespace of the tenant as a prefix, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to prevent two tenants to create the same topic, basically. So the clients need to put this prefix when connecting, and that's about it for the how the service works. Any questions to this part? Is it clear? Yeah. So so building this service, I thought I'd also provide some, I'm not saying this is things that would be, that I think should be the in Streamzy. I'm just saying this would have made it easier to sort of build this particular service, at least. So one was obviously this having to copy these topics around and so on. I understand there's also a good reason for that, because you don't want users accidentally configuring the topic operator to sort of step on other operators' foot, I guess. And I also set up a metrics endpoint here, which is also publicly accessible. So I configured I used the Streamzy documentation to set up metrics for Zookeeper and Kafka itself. There was more work than I actually expected. It wasn't extremely clear what metrics and alerts that were useful, but that is also because I'm Kafka newbie. So, but I noticed there were some alerts that required deploying some components in order to, for instance, detect that some pods were down or whatever. So, yeah. So that required some
I think
work.
you need things like cAdvisor and monitor the Kubernetes itself for some of these things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for disk space as well, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. And as far as I understood, well, there are some documentation on how to use it with the Prometheus operator, and that's great. So so I was able to set up some basic metrics and alerts. It would perhaps be nice to have an example that was sort of, I don't know, maybe without too many dependencies that allowed you to just deploy that, but maybe that's just a naive setup anyway. So and then on the rest of this, I have had a lot of ideas on what I could have done with this instead or as an alternative. One thing was to maybe try to play around with the Open Policy Agent to have more fine-grained admission control of what the users could do. I was also thinking to set up the OAuth integration that's part of Streamzy now, and I didn't get that far, but the idea there was to sort of, you could potentially, I guess, use a GitHub token or something like that to authenticate. Yeah, And as I mentioned in the start, this is really just allowing people to create topics. It would have been nice if, you know, this was for creating, you know, Stream Kafka clusters to play around with instead, but that costs a lot of money. So I think I could afford was topics as a service. Yeah. So, and that's as far as I've gotten with this right now. But I was wondering if like this could be something that was generally useful to host in the Streamsy community, or something that allowed had a lower bar of trying out the operator basically for new users. That's only, I guess, discussion point I'm interested to bring up. That's all I have. Questions? No.
Yep, thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Wolf. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, you look alike.
Thank you very much, and I think that's great. I have just one question, or maybe two. The first one is you are connecting using TLS, right? What's
Yes.
the certificate that you are using? Because I saw that you just downloaded the properties file without, I don't know, downloading any certificate.
Yeah, I'm using a public certificate. So on this cluster, I set up Cert Manager, and I create well, the Cert Manager, you can integrate it with Let's Encrypt, and I use that, put it into a secret, and basically use ingress resources with a TLS pass-through to expose the cluster. So the clients don't need to actually trust anything other than the system CAs, because it's signed by, the Let's Encrypt is signed by the root CAs, right?
Okay,
it's good
thanks.
to see the ingress access is still working.
You don't have automated tests for it?
I don't think so.
Yeah. No,
I don't think we have it for ingress. It was a bit of a prototype for the Nginx ingress only.
Right. No, I happen to have played around with this in the other project where I wrote the sandbox for, and there I just wanted to pay for one load balancer.
Yeah, now it's yeah. I think it's a great project, and I think it's it shows a bit what we know we are missing and we need to work on around multi-tenancy and around managing the topics and users for that. And I think we had some ideas there, but we never really found the time to implement them. And more or less most of them basically were around having instead of having a single endpoint for the whole cluster, was to more have a proxy which will do the endpoints for the different tenants, and then it will basically on the fly, for example, like when you the user creates, in your case, this my topic, and then in reality they need to connect to the topic. I'm not sure whether it was prefix or suffix by the tenant ID. So then
prefix,
the proxy would do this automatically and so on.
Yes.
So that's something what we definitely planned but didn't go to yet.
That would have been ideal, but I was actually looking briefly at the Kafka filters in Envoy, if that was something that would be easily implemented there. Yeah, it seems to be just a simple, one-to-one proxy right now.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I was some time ago, I was looking into it as well, but I'm not really friendly with that language, which is not so easy to copy paste from Stack Overflow. But it seemed like at this point it's great to do kind of tracing and metrics and so on, but it didn't seem to be advanced enough, or maybe I just didn't kind of understand all the power of the filters and so on. But like for this proxy, you would need to manage the advertised hosts. You would need to change the
Yes.
protocol and so on. So it didn't seem to be advanced enough for that.
I think it would require a significant amount of work, but I did see this as one of the, like in the Envoy GitHub issue that were sort of the starting point for the Kafka. They did mention multi-tenancy as sort of one of the things they'd like to see there, amongst a ton of other things. But it probably, I agree, it's probably a lot of work and quite fundamental.
Yeah.
How easy or complicated is it to stand up the Sandbox Ulf? What's it look like in order to get one, if someone else wants to get one running?
No, it's I think the biggest thing that I haven't really done GitOps for. So right now I have the entire CI/CD of the Sandbox components rolling. So when I merge PRs, that's sort of deploying, and all the Kubernetes manifests are stored in the repository, so you can sort of use that as a basics. But the biggest point I haven't automated is the SSO Keycloak part, where you need to set up a realm with several OpenID Connect clients, one that's used by the some internal like the REST API and some by the public clients to authenticate users. So that's kind of the thing that's most work right now. I did have a README that was up to date at some point, but I suspect that's it's not that's not the case anymore. But yeah, so the reason for doing all of this OIDC proxying stuff was because I wanted to run this on a managed Kubernetes instead of having to roll my own, because the alternative there is to sort of spin up your own API server with OpenID Connect properties, and that's just, managing Kubernetes is hard. So I was looking at using the Keycloak operator for managing the SSO, but it didn't necessarily support all the features I needed at this point.
I have the Keycloak operator working for OAuth in Kafka, but I never used it for anything like this, for the Kubernetes part and the GitHub Auth and so on.
Yeah, no, I think it was mostly about the networking and ingress side, and there was some options missing there to expose it in the way I wanted.
Just another question. The TLS encryption, so the TLS is just for encryption, is not even for client authentication, right?
Yeah. Just for encryption. So there's no authentication there. I was wondering if I should enable that, but it's also kind of more stuff to manage, and I wasn't sure which authentication type would be most appropriate here. I was thinking about OAuth just to, you could just imagine just reusing this.
Yeah, I guess with OAuth you can reuse the Keycloak which you have there already. Just for example, have a different realm, or maybe, but I'm not sure what GitHub allows or doesn't allow, whether you can just get the token from GitHub and use that directly.
Yeah, no, I think you have to request a token from Keycloak, but you can request that using your GitHub token, or something like that, I think.
One of the problems is that the OAuth in Kafka, it's kind of, there's a preparation, but it's not complete implementation. So basically we have for this Streamzy OAuth library, which Marco wrote mostly, or more or less everything. And so to use the OAuth, so when you have the example with the console producer, that right now works totally fine when you just download the binaries from Kafka. But if you would use the OAuth, you would kind of need to download the binaries from Kafka. Then you would need to download the jars from the OAuth library, add it to the Kafka, and then you can kind of configure it basically with the keycloak address and client ID, client secret, or refresh token or something like that. And then it can talk with the OAuth server. But out of the box, the client basically doesn't do anything about OAuth.
Okay, yeah. Because I was thinking, like, you know, when you download these client properties, that you would just get the token in there somehow, and then the client would.
Yeah, so you can do it when you have the library which Marco created in there. Then you can actually, so if you want to do that, you can just pass the token directly. It's an option as well.
Cool. Okay. That's all I had.
It was a great demo. Thanks a lot, and thanks for putting this together.
Yeah, no, thanks
Very
for the
nice
feedback.
work for how quickly you did that.
I did have most of the pieces ready, so.
Well, still. Okay, then I guess next on the agenda is are the open PRs and issues. The only PR which seemed for me worthwhile to revisit was this one about the Grafana dashboards.
Is this the one that I said I would rebase last time?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. I'll bump that up my to-do list, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I just want to see whether you got to it or not. Does anyone have any other PRs or issues to discuss? If not, then I also wanted to really just make sure everyone's aware of it. So Grim wrote the support security design for the UI and for the admin server. I think a bunch of us already gave him there some comments. He and Matthew were not able to join today, but yeah, they have just the comments to look into. And I really just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of the proposal, and if not, anyone who's interested can have a look and comment on that. And that's it for the planned agenda. Does anyone have any other business to discuss or anything else to raise? Then I guess that's probably it for today's meeting.